Welcome, everyone. I want to let you guys know, sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties here. My name is Francisco Arias. I'm with Ware Malcomb. I am your AIA Los Angeles Associate Director and EP Committee Chair. On behalf of the AIA Emerging Professionals Committee, we would like to thank the AIALA Practice Committee for collaborating with us. We look forward to having an insightful discussion today. I also would like to thank our sponsors for today's discussion, AC Martin, Montalba Architects, IBI, and HOK. Now, let's welcome our panelists. They represent three firm sizes and will be providing us with their unique perspectives on mentorship and training. Joining us today, we have David Frey, Michael Chang, and Laurie Marmalejo. Before we hear from these firm leaders about their thoughts on mentorship, we actually want to hear from all of you. So, what do you think mentorship is? Please use the chat feature we will be pulling up from the chat as we enter the roundtable portion of the event. Now, let's welcome our panelists for their respective firm profile and their firm strategies on mentorship. David, please kick us off.
Hi, everybody. My name is David Frey, and I'm the West Coast Technical Director for HOK for LA, San Francisco, and Seattle. And I'm actually coming to you from the south of France. I'm on vacation right now, but I'm really glad to be here. Just quickly, HOK, a little bit of background, was founded in 1955. We have approximately 1,800 employees, 24 offices worldwide, and we have a broad range of services: architecture, engineering, interior design, landscaping, lighting, planning, and sustainability. And we cover a lot of different project types as well, as you can see on the screen. Next slide, please. There we go. We have a pretty strong mentoring task force, I guess you might say, at HOK. It covers all of our regional business units like San Francisco, LA, Seattle. And when we have mentors, they're actually based on what the mentee is looking for in a mentor. And so we have questionnaires that go out asking everyone, what they're looking for. In fact, I got a email today, and my mentee was assigned today, just today. So that was kind of exciting. And the relationship at HOK is really focused on the mentee's career at HOK, which might be slightly different than you might find as a mentor. Having a mentor throughout your career may be a little bit different than someone who's helping you specifically within your office. And one thing that's good about having a mentor within the office is it gives you a direct communication to leadership, which is really important. And sometimes I think it's challenging for emerging professionals. Well, next slide.
David, I think you may have frozen. If you can hear me.
I think my internet connection's a bit unstable. Can you guys hear me? Oh, that's not good. I can hear you.
Yeah, if you just maybe try stopping the video, it might help with your bandwidth.
I think we should move on. Maybe you should move on if it, oh, there we go. So we also, can you hear me?
Yep, sounds good.
Sounds good.
Okay, let me try that. So I'll just quickly talk about, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes. Okay, David is joining us from France
move on
somewhere. Yeah, David,
we're gonna move on.
We're gonna move on, but we would love maybe if you, turn off your video, and then we'll try and come back to you for the Q&A portion. But we really appreciate everyone. Just so you know, David's joining us from France somewhere. Hopefully towards the end, he can tell us what amazing sights he's seeing. But for now, we're going to move on. Michael, please, I believe you're next.
Yeah, so thank you for that Sprint commercial rendition. Can you hear me? I'm Michael Chang. From AC Martin. We have 3 offices here, all in California, located in the LA, Pleasanton, as well as Roseville cities, so Bay Area, as well as down here in Southern California. We have about 171 employees total, 3 interns, and in terms of emerging professionals, we have about 6 employees between 1 to 3 years of experience and 15 between 4 and 7 years of experience. So we do have a good mixture here. Next slide. So in terms of mentorship, we do general onboarding, which is these general introductions. Usually people get assigned to somebody, and that's not necessarily an advocate, but more so just, hey, this is where you get things in the office. Other than that, we also have kind of our yearly reviews. It's kind of performance reviews, but that's the avenue to discuss goals with your supervisors. Next slide. So, in terms of continuing education, we do have various programs here within the office, Lunch and Learns, which, I think all offices have. We bring in consultants to enhance our general knowledge. RU is our program where it helps facilitate people to get licensures as well as additional certifications. As you notice, I do have various letters behind my last name. I'm a glutton for that. So, that helps. That committee helps with that for the employees. And then additionally, we also have a PA forum where the project architects meets together to, in the interest of advancing code information throughout the firm. So next slide. So as we're talking today about kind of during our roundtable, AC Martin, in my mind, does a great job with our RU program, making sure people get licensed, general knowledge, work sharing, that stuff. We do a pretty good job with the Lunch and Learns, the PA forums, but definitely there is a path for improvement here in terms of mentorship. We just went through a whole integration process across various firms. And I'm also here along with many of these attendees to help gain some knowledge, gain some avenues and ideas to possibly enhance our mentorship here within AC Martin. Thank you.
Great. My name is Laurie Marmalejo. I'm with Montalba Architects. I'm one of the associate principals there. And I'm the associate principal that umbrellas the sort of design and culture practice area of our office. We are a pretty diverse studio. We have about 60 talented staff of designers and architects. We have an office here in Santa Monica, so in LA. And then we also have an office in Lausanne, Switzerland, as well as a number of remote employees scattered around the US, Europe, and actually Asia. And we had that before COVID. So we've been doing the remote part, in sort of pieces over the years. About half of our office has more than 10 years of experience. There's a good chunk of those over 20 years. And then of the ones with less than 10 years of experience, there's an average of about 8 years, but we have a good body actually who are in the 1 to 3 year range. And we really value having their sort of fresh lens on the profession. Next slide. And in terms of mentorship, we kind of look at it in 3 parts, which I think everybody does, but there's the beginning sort of seed of it, which is the engagement towards the individual's growth. So personal growth engagement. And then we also have the training and skills development that we, shepherd in multiple ways throughout the year. And then similarly, we have the annual review setup. Next slide, and I'll just really quickly break down the differences in those. So the growth engagement for us started, it started since the beginning, but there was a number of years ago when we put together what you're looking at here, sort of zoomed out, which is a diagram of the different practice areas of our practice. And within each of those, we've broken it down to a really granular level of all of the different initiatives and sort of activities that happen within the office over the course of, say, a year. We update this basically annually with different things as they change. And everybody has a place to sort of plug in, and it might change and fluctuate every year, but we talk about this a lot and we reference it, and we ask everybody to kind of think of themselves within this bubble and figure out what they feel like most aligns with where they're looking for growth or where they're looking for their career to take them. Next slide. Oops. And then from that, again, annually, we have a series of training activities that happen. Some of them are required for a certain number of staff, and then there are others that are open. And so anybody can kind of test the waters of these different areas that they might be curious about. And then some of them are really open, where they're not so much about training or skills development, but they're about developing, again, a sort of culture around these things that interest us. And then in addition to that, we have the very sort of strict professional development program where we have a stipend, we have time off to take your licensing test, we have a Black Spectacles account, and we sort of offer those kind of resources. And then I think the last slide here. And then the last thing is for us, the annual reviews, especially starting this year post-COVID, have been a really big way of us identifying with the individual what those goals are. We look back over their achievements from the last year and reevaluate those goals. And then what we do during that time is assess, based on what they're looking for and what we, are seeing from them, what sort of person in our office might be a good fit as a mentor to them to help them grow within our office and within the profession in general, for their career. And then what happens is partway through the year, we do a check-in. And at that time, the individual identifies not only their supervisor, whoever they're most directly working with of late, but also another individual within the office that they want to elect to join them and get to know them and talk about those career goals. And we sort of foster it throughout the year, that sort of feedback loop and communication.
Great. Thank you so much for your respective firm overviews. It was great to hear what, your firms are doing. Some of our attendees responded to what they think mentorship is. I'd love to share some with everyone. So we have Amy. She says that she believes that mentorship is a symbiotic relationship between mentor and mentee to elevate the mentee to become successful, professional in their respective industry. Another one is mentorship is about building relationships that allows mentees to reach out to their mentor throughout their career to build up their abilities and confidence as they progress. One last one was mentorship is the process by which daily guidance, teaching, encouragement, and growth can be imparted on more junior staff. So these are just some thoughts, some conversations that are happening now. I'm curious, with your individual experiences in mind, David, Michael, Laurie, I don't know if we have David on still, but Laurie and Michael, how would you respond to that question on what you think mentorship is? Michael, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, so, I think a lot of, the initial firm presentations hinted at this, is that, I do see mentorship as a personal connection. Although AC Martin doesn't necessarily have a set mentorship program as part of its, corporate policies, we do kind of give the empowerment to kind of the employees to establish that mentorship within the firm. So being in my role as a technical lead within the special services group, I do oversee various people, and I do try to reach out to my employees here as much as I can to make sure that they are meeting their goals. We do our formal yearly reviews, but we don't really do an intermediary review. So I do see that as lacking. I'm really interested to hear from Laurie about kind of that kind of policy that you guys have over there.
Sure. Yeah, we actually just sort of retooled retooled that this last year based on, you know, how hard it was with COVID to go through the reviews, and just wanting to find a platform where people could connect with someone in the interim and find a, you know, a connection that really resonated with them. And I think some of the challenges that you have with mentorship are you as an individual might not exactly know who within the firm would be the correct person to help foster the skills that you're interested in. And so having someone else like I say supervisor, but we're kind of an open office here. So it's the person you're most closely working with who is a little bit more experienced than you. But having your supervisor help you identify or suggest different people in the office, I think is a really valuable thing. And so we actually have, like, in addition to that program you were asking about, we have an individual in our office, Jose Diaz, and he's one of the associates, and he kind of helps filter through that and make sure that mentorship is something that we're continually talking about. And then maybe just to answer that, the question, I think the way one of our principals phrased it was like, you know, when you're young, you look at someone, you go, wow, that person is amazing. That's what I got to be like. And like, that's kind of like where the idea of the mentor comes in. It's sort of like a role model, but they help advocate for you. And then they, in some cases, if you don't know what, you know, career path you want, sometimes they can be more like a counselor. And there's somebody who like gets you and can help you navigate the profession and figure out, you know, what feels like the most authentic career path for what you're looking for. So it's about, I think, guidance and motivation and inspiration for people to see in themselves what they can be.
Great. Thanks, Laurie. I see we have David on. I would love to maybe circle back with you and see what you think mentorship is, just so we all kind of know where each panelist is coming from, and then we can build off of it. So David, please let us know.
Well, I think that, you know, there's different types of mentorship, right? And I personally have had the same mentor probably the last 25 years, and he doesn't work at HOK, right? And I think the mentorship program we have inside HOK is more about HOK and advancing your career within HOK, but also talking about how to move forward in your career. You know, mentors, I think, you know, a really close mentor is someone you can trust and you can call and talk about your career and talk about other things as well, right? I think internally, the mentors we have, it kind of gives you a line of communication to leadership within the office, and also, like Laurie mentioned, having an advocate within the office, which is really important in a large firm. And what we try to also do is, you know, we talk about how we do it. We have bi-weekly meetings, you know, with the mentors once they're assigned. And before I did my Sprint commercial earlier, I was mentioning that my mentor was just assigned, and it was based on what she was looking for. And she looked at me and said, I want Dave to be my mentor, right? So,
Your connection is breaking up again a little bit.
Yeah, David, maybe you could just not have video. Typically that does help with bandwidth. It's just a lot pulling. Once you get your video off, maybe we'll kick it to you later for the next one, but it was great to have you on for the time. Francisco, I believe you have some words here now.
So we'll wait for David. Hopefully he'll join us for the next question. All great responses, and kudos to everybody who's attending and providing their input. But one thing I want to ask as we start this conversation is, do firms or your firms see a difference between training and mentorship? Or are they considered the same? Which I think I would love to hear from you, Laurie, and then we could circle back to Michael, and hopefully David can join us.
Yeah, absolutely. They're definitely different from our perspective. They're complementary to some extent, because they're both heading towards building you towards your professional goals. But training is really about skills development, and, you know, whatever particular skill set is needed for, again, for your career goals. But mentorship, I think, goes beyond that, and it's more about developing the whole person. It's about the individual. And as David mentioned, I think the panelists here, we're sort of in agreement that mentorship is beyond just the profession. It should be somebody that you have a connection to who can help advise you on life and the profession. So that in our perspective, just keep it short, they're different.
How about you, Michael? How do you guys view that? Is there a difference?
There is definitely a difference there. You know, as I mentioned in my firm profile, you know, in terms of training, I think we do a pretty good job there. We hold lunch and learns, we hold periodic, like these things called BIM soup, where our BIM managers would come out and hold presentations on how to best use Revit to how we want to work, right? We also have you know, various consultants. I help manage the continuing education within AC Martin here, so I do ask consultants to come in every now and then to touch on topics like NFP 285. That was a hot button topic a few years ago as it became more and more highlighted. So that is training, but in terms of mentorship, it is you ask yourself, what am I going to be? Where am I going to be in 5 years, right? And at AC Martin, we do have our yearly reviews where each person is to self-reflect on that. But other than that, you know, we just had our PA forum. It was recognized that we're like kind of lacking in that sense, and you know, we started an associates committee to help tackle this issue. You know, generate some ideas on how to best proceed. And you know, I think some ideas that were floating around here is what, you know, David was kind of touching on in terms of partnering people within the firm to have that advocate to make sure that, you know, the goals that you see and where you want to be in 5 years is attainable, right? Making sure that you have it is a goal instead of a wish list. So you have the steps necessary to make it a goal, right? So that's kind of the take here. And I see that I think David's back on. So
Yeah. So let's see, David. I see your hand is raised. You mind giving us your perspective?
Yeah, I got to say it again. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I
Sounds
turned off my
great.
video. Okay, great. You know, there is a difference in my mind between mentoring and training. At HOK, we have a really robust training program. Every Friday morning at 9 o'clock, we have a 1-hour training program. It, you know, covers everything from how to dimension a plan, which a lot of people don't know how to do, and they need to be taught how to do it, to how you do stone selection, you know, different MEP systems and so on. So we have that every Friday morning. That's been going on for about 2.5 years now. And that's for the entire West Coast. So that's all about training. We also do Revit training and things like that. And this is all different than, I think, mentoring. And, you know, in mentoring, I love to ask emerging professionals like Michael, you were just talking about, where they see themselves in 10 years. Because you really want to help them understand that there's a lot that's going to happen over the first 10 years of their career. And I always tell people, you want to happen to your career rather than your career happening to you, if that makes sense. You really want to drive your career. And in the larger firms like HOK, at some point, you kind of have to declare your major, whether you're going to be a technical architect like myself, a project designer, or a project manager. And at some point, you just kind of have to declare what you're doing. So part of the mentoring that we have is talking about those different career paths within the organization. So, but I do think, I guess there's 3 different things here. There's training, there's kind of the personal mentor, and then there's the mentor or advocate within the firm. So I think there's kind of 3 things the way I look at it. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Hey, Laurie, I see your hands raised. Let's, I'd love to hear from you.
I just wanted it to maybe pile on to what David was saying and agree that I think that even at smaller than firms that are maybe smaller size, at a certain point in your career, you do still kind of have to declare your major, because it's very difficult for somebody to be amazing at everything. There's so many different pieces of our profession. So it really helps in terms of focusing your efforts on what you want to build, you know, your highest and best skills into.
Mhm. Agreed. So everyone kind of mentioned the existing difficulties with mentorship and how it's kind of an ongoing process. I think in the last year, we have experienced something unlike anything else. So I was curious how, you know, due to the shift of remote and flexible work, how have your firms adopted the mentoring strategies in this last year? David?
Yeah, hopefully I'm not repeating myself, but what we've done is we've set up bi-weekly meetings with our mentees. And it's, you know, it's a 1 hour meeting, and we just talk about how things are going within HOK, how things are going with their career. I like to really focus on licensing and lead accreditation to see how they're doing on that, because that really helps to advance people's careers as well. So
David, do you think you're going to continue that now that we're maybe coming out of this pandemic, as I say that with a mask on, but is
yeah,
that something you've considered?
yeah, it's going to continue. It was happening before COVID, you know, and, you know, we would be able to take people out to lunch and so on. One thing I do need to point out about the relationship, though, it's important that the mentee take the initiative. We really try to get them to take the initiative to really be part of the process, rather than, you know, say me trying to chase them down for the meeting or whatever. And that really helps them, I think, to reach out with leadership. It gives them the, you know, the kind of permission and authority to feel like they can reach out to leadership, which I think is really important for the, you know, the emerging professionals to understand that I think the most people I've met in my career who are in leadership positions really want to talk to emerging professionals and generally have an open door for them. So I think that's really important, that you feel empowered to talk to the principals in your offices. And I think that's really important. So.
All right. Should we move on to the next question?
Oh,
Or
I think
Laurie?
Michael had his hand up. I was just curious to hear what he said.
Oh, sorry, Michael.
Yeah, that's fine. So I wanted to add on to what David was saying, because I want to kind of acknowledge that there has been a challenge, right? Making that connection due to COVID, due to remote work. And I could say that, you know, with AC Martin, once the mask orders was kind of lifted temporarily, now it's in place, as you can see. But during that brief period, we were in person with some people, and it was a lot easier to follow up, at least from a mentor standpoint. So I do want to state that it is on the onus on firm leaderships to make sure that it is conveyed that mentees can reach out, right? And I think some of the policies that some of the panelists are mentioning helps foster that idea that firm leaderships are open to meeting with mentees, and I think that is that is something that needs to be acknowledged here, because Francisco and Alise, they were helpful enough to send out a form to emerging professionals, a survey, and it is a stark contrast between what emerging professionals would say and firm leadership, people with 10, 20 years of experience would say, in terms of how someone approaches mentorship. And we just have to make sure that we put on the cap, right, of if you're a mentee, put on the cap of a mentor and think, hey, they're busy, take the initiative and it'll get the job done. Or the mentor put the cap on the mentee and make sure that they understand that you're accessible, right, to have this conversation.
Yeah.
Laurie?
Yeah, I was going to say, absolutely. I absolutely agree with Michael and David. And I think that may be the biggest misconception. And it's definitely something in our office that we try and foster, this culture of openness and accessibility. So then I guess there's a difference between like being available and being accessible. So I think, yeah, the emerging professionals maybe should recognize that it's not potentially intentional on the part of leadership, that they have a lot of meetings, maybe more meetings than the emerging professionals do. So their time is maybe less available, but if you reach out to them, they're still really excited to engage with you. So I think the engagement is just so huge. If you put in the effort, I think, at least in our firm, and I think the wide variety or the wide like spectrum of the profession, that there will be a positive reception. And later, I think we can talk about some ways to get around that if you're not getting a positive reception.
Well, I think that's a great segue into our next question. So just to build upon it, it could be a scary feeling, right? So it's based on the responses from the survey and what we're hearing here, mentees should take the initiative, and that mentorship is often attributed to a personal connection with an individual. But how does little old me approach an individual for mentorship? I mean, what are some tips you guys can offer for that? So let's start it off with Michael.
For me, the mentors that I've chosen in the past, I have kind of evaluated, and I asked myself this too, because I kind of knew the questions was going to come to me, but I kind of asked myself what I wanted to be, right? What kind of architect I wanted to be. And, I knew that someone in a high design position, that wasn't me. Like, I get where they're coming from, but I probably, that's not what I like to do day to day. What I like to do day to day is problem solve. What I like to do day to day is making sure that clients taken care of. And I was fortunate enough to have strong co-workers in the past that I was able to identify as mentors. And in that sense, I approached them and I just asked the question, hey, could I go out to lunch with you? I have this predicament. What is your advice? And through time, like when I was actually looking to change work, I sought this person out and I said, hey, this is how I feel. What are your thoughts? And she actually, she worked with me at the time, and she actually said to me, like, I hate to see you go, but I agree. Like, for the betterment of you, you should leave. So it's someone that you have to just identify that looks out for you, right? Despite whether they benefit or not from what they're saying. So.
Thanks, Michael. Laurie, you want to add to that?
Yeah. Yes. Sorry. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think when I think about reaching out to somebody as a mentor, it seems scary to me to think of, I'm putting myself back in my earlier years, but not knowing if the person that I'd be reaching out to is actually the right mentor, if I don't know them, if I don't have a personal connection with them yet. And so I feel like what I remember most is the people that I was directly working with, expressing to them what I'm interested in learning about or what I want to improve, and asking them who they know of in the office, like which associate or which project manager would is really sort of strong at that and might be someone that I could talk to, and then having them help be the sort of conduit to make that connection. So because they probably have had, a lot longer of a relationship with that person, and it's much more natural for them to say, hey, by the way, this Laurie and was interested in learning this, maybe you guys go to lunch, or maybe, I don't know. I feel like that helps a lot. And again, I'm going to go back to the engagement as the emerging professional. Most of the leadership in our office and the people who, have really great strengths in one arena or the other lead different workshops, or are the person that everybody goes to ask the questions about X, Y, or Z. And so engaging with whatever workshop they're doing that you're interested in, and just then engaging with them maybe at like the casual office events. So we have like a Fridays at 5 where we do like the happy hour. Engaging with them in those non-confrontational events is a really great way to kind of break down that barrier and start to get to ask them to go to lunch.
All great tips. Thank you, Laurie. David, anything to add to that?
Yeah, to use Laurie's language from earlier, I'm going to pile on a bit on this one. I think that one of the best ways to get a mentor, I think, is to kind of be your own advocate within the office. You know, we do design presentations, you know, in the evenings once a week. We do technical presentations and so on. And I think the more visible you are within the office really helps. It really helps your career. You know, if you're engaged in meetings, you know, if you're doing presentations, you know, that are, I call it homework, but it's always fun too, right? And, you know, at HOK, you know, I was talking about declaring your major, and part of it is at HOK, the lines are really blurry between the different, you know, the project managers, the project designers, and the technical architects. The lines are really blurry. And you might find that, you know, you have aspirations to be, you know, a technical architect or a designer, but maybe you want to, you know, talk to somebody in project management just to get, you know, some idea of what they're doing and so on. So I think a lot of it has to do with, you know, kind of raising your hand and being visible within the office. I think that's really important. You know, the other thing is just, you know, it takes a lot of nerve sometimes for some people, but, you know, just walk up to somebody and say, hey, let's go out to lunch or whatever. And you know, on a personal note, I've had a few people in my career, you know, 5 or 6 or 7 years after I met them, say, you know, I was really scared of you when I first saw you in the office. I was afraid to talk to you. And I personally took that to heart and tried to lighten up a bit. But, you know, once again, most people, you know, they want to talk to you and they want to help you out in your career. And, you know, it just occurred to me, helping you out in your career also helps the office, right? Because the better you're doing, the better the office is going to do, and the better our projects are going to be in the long run. So, yeah, that's kind of a long-winded answer, but I think there's a lot that the mentee can do to help find this person. So.
Great, Michael, I see your hands raised. Would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to pay homage to the title here, Training Next You. I've always perceived mentorship and training as kind of self-benefiting because as you want to increase, move on in your career, you need to find somebody who can take your role in a project, right? So I'm always personally trying to look for the next me so that when I do eventually move up, I have somebody that I trust to do the day-to-day activities that I'm doing right now.
Great, thanks. So I see we have a little lull in the chat. I would love you guys to submit questions for our panelists. Please go ahead and submit them. We would be glad to read them off to them. In the meantime, I was curious, you know, we can continue the conversations while we wait. But how have your firms fostered growth to provide a rounded individual? I know David mentioned you do have training sessions, but often people are kind of grouped into specific groups. So I guess, how do you foster talent? And then how maybe would you recommend someone pivoting? Maybe they find themselves in a situation where they've declared, as David says, and they don't like it anymore. So maybe how would you, you know, foster talent and a skill, but also wonder if you want to learn a new skill. You've already declared. How do you kind of have that conversation of, I want a new experience? David, maybe you can start us off.
Yeah. That's what I was talking about earlier about you know, you happening to your career as opposed to the career happening to you, because you know, it's easy to get stuck doing something, right? And if you're really good at something, people are gonna ask you to do it, and that's really important. But you have to be vocal about your career, and you really have to look, you know, for me, it's always looking 10 years out to see where I'm gonna be, right? And I think you have to be vocal. If you're, you know, in a situation that's not working for you, you have to, you know, course correct. At HOK, we like people to, you know, we want to help them in their career, because if they're doing what they want to do, they're going to do a better job at the end of the day, right? So I think it's about being vocal, looking towards the future as much as possible, and, you know, trying to steer your career. That's really important. And you may find yourself in a situation where you don't like what you're doing. You want to do something else. I've met a few people that have done that over the years. They've gone on to be, you know, I don't know, accountants and lawyers and, you know, rock stars or whatever. I don't know. But, you know, there's a lot you can do, and you just got to pay attention to how you're moving forward and really take charge of what's going on.
And I saw May Mohammed actually raise their hand. Did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, hi everyone. Great discussion. And I think just in this idea about pivoting, I don't know if it's still around, but there was a program called IDIQ that was, I think, the NCARB kind of internship development program that would take I think you had to do that as part of your ARE process. You had to finish a certain number of hours of experience in each kind of category. And the idea there was that it would really expose people to all different aspects of the design process, from schematic design, programming, all the way straight through construction administration. So I always thought that that was a wonderful thing. I think it's gone by the wayside. But
Actually, I think it's still there. The IDIQ, I believe, is still there.
Okay, that's good, because I haven't seen anybody like recently ask me to sign theirs or anything. But in like, maybe it's just because I haven't. But anyway, so I think that's really important. Like when we're talking about people getting stuck in certain roles and not having enough exposure to the different parts of the business, I think that's a really important thing when we're talking mentorship, that we intentionally try to provide that for our junior staff, and you know, as it moves on, and having that connection with that personal connection with your mentor, to make sure that you're getting exposure to what you know, all the things that you want to get exposure to. But I don't know that we have that kind of, like within AC Martin, if we have that sort of specific kind of rotation set up, or how that would work. Michael, I don't know if you can talk to that.
Yeah. So it's kind of disheartening that that, you know, through integration, this wasn't disseminated a bit better. But there are some processes through that. Once again, the RU community is not necessarily there just for licensure, but it's also there for certification, you know, just lead. Additionally, I know at least within our sector, we do have this running spreadsheet where people who are seeking certain hours in certain, you know, categories as part of their NCARB, you know, I think it's AXP now, that they can fill in those hours, show the need, and then it's all discussed during the staffing level. So, you know, I know that you're part of a separate sector, so I could run this by, at least, you know, since you're an AC Martin person, I could run this by our RU committee to make sure that that's kind of highlighted as something that maybe you know, separate sectors could do to make sure that we do foster that growth and make sure that they do get that training in those specific categories.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. I see Ashley Cummings has a question. Ashley, do you mind asking your question to the group? All right, well, maybe I can ask for you. So Ashley wrote the following. In my firm, there's a major disconnect from seniority to young professionals. We have in the past set up a mentorship program, but it fell apart due to lack of free time for seniority to meet and engage in extra activity with young professionals. What do you recommend is a positive way to encourage seniority to sacrifice their free time? I've experienced that myself, Ashley. So let's see what Laurie has to say about this.
Yeah, I was reading the question as we were talking and thinking about that a bit, because I think it's a really good question, and that's unfortunate because I think at least, and again, I can only really speak from our perspective, but we try and encourage everybody to see this as like a worthwhile use of your time. But what we try and do, because this kind of affects all different parts of what we do on a daily basis, but what we try and do is make these things not extra. So I think we lean on lunches a lot because everybody has to eat is kind of what we say. And so it's nice to try and do lunches. But what we also do are we've put together a series of sort of Friday afternoon, they're actually at lunch as well, but Friday lunch chats where we invite, in this case, it's a particular thing. It's our technical leadership to come have lunch, and anybody can come and join and bring Post-its with questions about some technical thing that they're working with. But I think it really gives you an opportunity to get to know them and get to talk to them. And again, it's like a lunch setting, and there's usually no more than like 10 or 12 people that kind of come any given Friday. And so it's somewhat intimate. And I think you start to build a relationship there that you can then, springboard into later asking them for lunch, and it doesn't feel like so much of an extra or like a burden to them. And so I think if you could find a way to create that kind of activity that can sort of be a stepping stone towards mentorship within your firm, that might help for the senior group to feel like they're both helping build up the office, because again, like during those sessions, everybody's getting a little bit of training, but it also helps start that relationship connection. So hopefully that's the most immediate thing that came to mind. So maybe one of the other panelists, yeah, they both have some ideas.
David?
Yeah, I think this comes back to being vocal again. I've worked at large offices most of my career. And if the mentorship program is falling apart, maybe it's time to raise your hand, find out who's in charge, find out who's in charge of the committee and keep it going, and that actually will help you in your career within the office because it shows that you're engaged and you're concerned, right? And, again, people get busy, right? But, it's important for leadership to be engaged with the emerging professionals. It's very, very important. So again, it's about, raising your hand and, making it happen, I think. And the more vocal you can be, the more likely it will be successful for you, I think.
Michael, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I'm in staffing discussions all the time, and some people raises valid points that as firm leadership, we also need to make sure that we understand that if a mentee doesn't get what they need from the firm, then this is a great marketplace right now to find a new job. Like, just frankly speaking, like I'm just being as truthful as I can here, and that this is like I said, this is an issue that AC Martin has been tackling recently because we had our integration, right? So a lot of the effort was kind of merging our offices together to become rebranded as the AC Martin family. And I think a lot of these smaller initiatives, I wouldn't say mentorship as a smaller initiative, but a lot of these initiatives kind of fell by the wayside. And I would say at this point, what has happened is, employees have voiced this. An associate committee has been formed so that discussion can be made around here. So I think just being very honest with your firm leadership, hey, where are we with this, right? And being active on that, and maybe even helping restart this, right, as a program within your firm. And Laurie and David touched upon how that would help with your career just overall too, as well, showing that initiative.
Thank you, Michael. And Naoko, you mentioned it, and I was about to say it. I mentioned it earlier when I asked the question, Ashley's question is, I experienced that myself, and what I ended up doing at my previous firm, I joined the AIA. Sometimes when you're looking for mentorship and you can't find it in a certain pool, nothing's preventing you from fishing somewhere else. So throw that net out, look at for other professional organizations. There's great opportunities to meet really talented and interesting individuals outside your firm as well. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Laurie.
Yeah. I was also going to say, because I saw Naoko posted right when I was thinking that same thing, which is that we have the professional development portion of our office and the Black Spectacles membership. But beyond that, we offer the employees a stipend for professional development that they can spend on any number of things. And so, one year somebody took a photography class, and another year, people have used it to do a 1 week study program on X, Y, or Z. And so there are a lot of organizations out there that offer classes on different skills. So if you have the ability to, we also encourage people in our firm to look outside the office, because obviously we only have a limited number of hours every week that we can give. So it might be difficult to get all of the resources in there, but there's so many resources out there that you could also look to. And the AIA is just one of the biggest and greatest ones.
Thanks, Laurie. David, I see your hand's also raised.
Yeah, I found that in large organizations, rarely is someone going to say no to you if you have an idea, or if you want to start a committee or something, and if it's going to help the office, if it's going to help the industry, basically have at it, suggest it. And that's something that I learned in my career, that just go ahead and do it. What's the worst thing that could happen to you? And then everything I think the emerging professionals do, and everything everyone does, really is outward facing from the office, because the better your work is, the better the office's work is. And everything you do is basically marketing and mentoring at the end of the day, because everything you do goes out into the ether and people see it and they get an idea of how, this office can do this office can do that. They're really good, that kind of stuff. So every single thing you do is kind of outwardly facing. But I think this idea of, just, I guess that's the Nike ad thing, just do it, right? And, take control of your career. I've said that 100 times. I can't say it enough.
Well, we appreciate it. So I'm curious, Francisco, and everyone's mentioned, if mentorship, it doesn't have to be in your firm. I totally agree. You can look for it elsewhere. Another thing that kind of popped into my mind is often, this is more of like a lifestyle life coach thing, but if, you want something, often it's good to like model that, like be what you want kind of thing. So it makes me think of, if you want to have a mentor, maybe you can find that elsewhere, like be a mentor to someone else. I know often in my experience, being an EP emerging professional, we don't maybe consider ourselves as being in that position, but we could look behind, or not behind, but kind of where we just came from in our path, whether it's education, recent graduates, kind of reaching back to universities that we're connected with, and build that and maybe develop that network that we're mentioning to reach out to. So I'm curious, Michael, Laurie, David, what are some of the experiences in being a mentor that have impacted you, and maybe specifically that first time you mentored someone, and how do you recommend EPs or people early in their career can be that to someone else? So Laurie?
The first time I was actively thinking and didn't immediately have a response, but
sorry, I'm throwing in new things in here.
This is great. No, it's great. I think I remember them building so organically, and I just remember them starting from someone coming up to me to ask me questions about something. And in some cases we were working on a project together. and I just, I happen to have more experience than they have. But in some cases, we weren't working on a project together, and somebody else in the office told them that I was the person to ask the question, probably would have the answer. And that led over time to basically having that happen over and over until we had a relationship where we could just kind of like, I mean, most people in the office I can walk around and say hi to, it's not like they're strangers, but it led to a relationship where it was more like we were checking in on each other. I think that's one thing that's the biggest challenge for leadership, which shouldn't really feel, it doesn't feel like a challenge, but it's a challenge to, in the middle of all your meetings, follow up with the individual. And I think when you get to the point where it's so natural, you realize, oh, that I'm mentoring this person. We have this kind of relationship without having it being spoken. And then you realize years later, they give you a call they pick up the phone and give you a call, and you're just like, oh, this is great. Like, yeah, it's such still a natural relationship. So I think they all started organically. I don't know if that actually answered your question. I'll let the other guys go, and then I'll maybe circle back if I have something more eloquent.
Yeah, David, go for it.
Yeah, I had a couple of experiences where, I keep talking about the mentee taking charge, right? But I've had a couple of experiences over the years where I saw an individual, they would come in the door and they would walk to their desk, they would do their work, then they'd be done, they'd walk to the door, right? And I actually reached out to a couple of these people. Now I'm actually their mentor now. I reached out to them and said, look, you come in and you go to your desk and you walk out. What are you doing, right? And it helped them open up. So I think, we can look around and see that as well. Some people I think are just not comfortable or, reaching out. And so I think sometimes we have to look around. And then I've got kind of a funny thing that's happened over the years. I lived in the Bay Area up until about 2 years ago. And after I left another 3-letter firm that shall remain nameless at the moment, I had realized I had collected about 25 people that we would have lunch. I would just coordinate this lunch quarterly. And they're still doing it now that I've moved to LA, and they're still doing a quarterly lunch called Friends of Fry, which I think is kind of interesting. But most of those relationships happened organically, the way Laurie was talking about it. It's just suddenly you're, talking to somebody and mentoring them and, becoming their friends in some cases, I think. So.
Thank you. Michael, do you have anything to add to that? I know it's a wild card. I just got inspired.
No, it's a good question, right? I think from my perspective, I do. So I may act jovial right now, but I think my office demeanor is more like RBF, right, or something like I don't really, I'm not as approachable, right? I've been told this a lot of times, and I've made a conscientious effort to try to reach out actually to remind people that, hey, I may act this way, but that's because that's how I was kind of raised too, in this architectural world, in a dog-eat-dog kind of fashion. And I do remind my the people that work under me that, hey, at any point in time, let's go out for lunch. Like, Laurie, you mentioned like this mid-year reviews, right? I've been encouraging my staff to like hit me up before the yearly reviews so that we could talk kind of off the record about your goals, right? About how far you have progressed, and that's more so looking out for loan, because I don't necessarily want to have some of that stuff mentioned in their official performance review. So I think for me, more so it has been me trying to reach out more because of how I kind of act 8 to 5 during office hours.
David?
Mhm.
I think it'd be interesting, there's 50 people on here, and you talk about wild cards. I would be interested to know what these 50 emerging professionals want in a mentor, right? So I don't know if there's anybody on the call here that can put in the chat, what are they looking for in a mentor specifically? Because it's such a, the more we talk, the more broad this really becomes, I think. So anyway, I'd be curious to hear what anybody thinks, if anybody has any comments.
Yeah, please fill in the comments. Maybe if you have a great mentor, what are some qualities that they have? If you could, conjure up your ideal mentor, put it in here. We can see what you think. But yeah, please, David, I think that's a great idea. Let's see what we get here. Let's see what can happen. Francisco.
While we wait on the chat to fill up, I want to just add that this all started with a collaboration between the practice committee and the emerging professionals committee. We sent out the survey and some interesting findings, and most of the findings were, at least from the people that responded, were management needs to take an active role in assigning or providing these types of services. My question now is we'll start it off with Michael. What do you guys expect from emerging professionals? If we could flip the table, right? And, there were some good things talking about, take initiative, take charge, but what does that mean, right? So what are you guys expecting from us?
So this speaks to kind of my schedule here. And, I serve as a mentor, not just in-house, but I signed up for USC mentorship. So I do have like college mentor, I'm mentoring college students, as well as the ACE program, which I mentor high school students. And, I wouldn't advise this with the high school students, but for various levels, I do ask them like, hey, when you ask to have a meeting, don't just, hey, can I have a meeting? Set a date, right? Can we meet on X day? Let's get it on the calendar. And once it's on the calendar, I think every single firm, every single person here on the call, every single firm leader kind of abides by the calendar. I think with the digital world, we're kind of run more so by our calendars than us running our calendars, right? So that's my recommendation here, that when you do ask for meetings, follow it up with tangibles like when and where, right? And at that point, it becomes concrete more so than just like, hey, we're gonna meet sometime, right? So that's my one like big suggestion there.
Great, yeah, thanks. I'm curious, we have a question in the chat by Amy. She says, how would you suggest independent designers starting their own practices find a mentor? I know the AIA has several activities for networking, but wonder if there is enough time for organic mentor-mentee relationships to form. Laurie, would you like to take that one on?
Yeah, I was actually typing in case we ran out of time. I wanted to be able to at least like hit send to everybody, but I have a friend who's in the very similar situation, and he's engaged with Entree Architect, which is an organization that kind of helps. Well, they have an online platform, sort of a newsletter, but they also kind of help form these small relationships among people with a similar situation. And so you can kind of find people who maybe have been doing it for a handful more years than you, and you can ask questions of each other. That's one thing. Another thing I was thinking about was, at least in my history, is being able to reach out to past professors of yours who may have had students, years before you who've been doing it now for 5 or 6 more years than you, and inquiring if there's anybody that they know of you could reach out to, and if they could, asking them if they could help make that connection for you. I think it kind of also brings me to this other thing I was thinking about, which goes back to something David said, which is, in my experience, I think I have a handful of what I would consider mentors in different areas of the profession. I guess I could sum it down to one particular mentor that I go to for like overall counselorship and guidance. But there are a few people in different practice areas that I consider mentors. They kind of taught me about that particular thing because they're really good at it. And they really had insights into what it takes and what it's like. And therefore I chose that that's not maybe my career path, but it, you know, at least you're helping me be proficient, maybe good at it, even though that's not what I'm going to be excelling at. And so I think similarly, if you're starting out in the architecture industry, you're probably dealing with like the business and the taxes and the business licensing and all these kind of crazy things. And maybe there's people who aren't one individual, but multiple people who can help you triangulate, you know, a sort of feeling of security, if that helps.
David, I see your hands up. Is that from the last time or no? Feel free to add on.
Well, actually, I was looking at the next chat that
Oh yeah,
came in.
let's go
And
there. Yeah, so
I think my hand was up from the last one, but I was looking at the next chat.
Oh.
And the last question, or second to last question is, you know, what are we looking for in a portfolio, right? You know, we have a new thing at HOK where we have blind portfolio reviews. We don't know what the college is, and we don't know the gender of the individual, and we just look at the work. And, you know, from my perspective, you know, I look for the quality of the presentation, which is really important, you know, how it looks just sort of graphically. I also look to see if there's an understanding of architecture from, you know, a technical aspect and a design aspect, right? So that there's some understanding of what's going on, right? And I also look for less words, I think, you know, and brevity in a portfolio, and getting the point across with the architecture. So, you know, high quality images, you know, clarity of thought. And, you know, my education was really centered around, you know, understanding diagrams of the architecture. So I always look for people that draw or can show some sketches of, you know, a diagram of what their thought process is, right? And not always just to finish building, but, you know, what they're really thinking about. So I think, you know, looking for somebody who's really thinking. What we need in this profession is people who can think, I think, and really, you know, are creative, right? And aren't just kind of following around and doing stuff, but people that really can think about how to solve these complex problems. You know, and I'm going off on a tangent now because architecture is getting more and more and more complex every day, right? And, you know, even our relationship with contractors is changing dramatically, you know, over the last few years. So, but I think quality and a clarity of thought and an understanding of design and technical issues is really important in a portfolio that you're going to present to somebody. That's very important.
Laurie, Michael, any of you guys want to add to that?
It's a hard question, I would say. It's simply because there isn't like a right way to do a portfolio, right? There's certain guidelines that you have to follow. Obviously, check for spelling, check for that, you know, the standard low-hanging fruit check boxes. But I think overall, you just need to make sure you put forward your best foot forward, right, and what you want to do. And I think you know, this is talking in particular about my USC mentee, where I was reviewing her portfolio, and I asked her, what does she want to do in architecture? Like at that age, like it's hard for her to say, and I completely agree, but in particular, the work that she was presenting did not foster the idea that she wanted to go into design, right? Meaning that she should be showing more design skills than, you know, these construction documents materials that she did in another internship. To me, you need to make sure that your portfolio tells a story, right? And it kind of guides them to where you want to be, or the position that you want to be in their firm. That would be my pointers there.
Laurie?
I agree with Michael that it's a store, like the portfolio is a very small snapshot and it's a little bit of a story that you're telling the reviewer. And so you're curating it to show the reviewer what you want them to see about yourself. And so I think knowing a little bit of what you want is important in terms of crafting that narrative. And so, out of maybe a 10-page, limited spread of this portfolio that we're getting to look at, we're having to interpret what and who you are. So again, I agree with the brevity because it's a lot to read through, but like the particular words you use and how you phrase what you're describing the work that we're seeing is really helpful in helping us build a picture of who you are. And I think, I don't think we expect most interns, specifically interns, to come to the office with a whole lot of experience in anything in particular, or like a whole lot of really highly developed skills. They're coming to kind of have an experience and sort of see as much as they can of all the different pieces and experience that so that they can start to form ideas about what they might be more interested in developing. So I think we're interested in knowing what you've learned and what you've done so far, and what your particular lens on that is, because two people could have the same, like, even if you're looking at the same portfolio, people could interpret what you're looking at or how you're looking at that differently, from a design perspective or a technical perspective. So I don't know if I have any particular advice except to show us who you are and what inspires you in the best way that you can through the imagery and the words that are in it.
I think if I could just add a little bit to that, I agree with everybody. You have to, at least from my perspective, you have to, in your portfolio, cater to the position you're looking for, right? So to Michael's point, if you want to be a designer, you have to show some design work. If you want to be a technical type of person, maybe play up the technical portion of it. And to build, to answer some of the other questions that you have, I think you have to do, there's going to be a big portion of you that has to do some research. You have to go out there and look at the firm's websites, Instagram accounts, and see who they are. And then little by little, as you start looking at these firms and what they're providing, their culture, their products, ask yourself if that's somewhere or something you want to be doing for the next few years. And that's going to start to limit at least the selection pool from all these firms in LA or wherever you may be, to something that's a little bit more a niche or something that you can relate to a little bit closely.
Yeah, this is Dave. I totally agree with that. One of the interesting things, once we've seen the portfolio and then you get an interview, what happens, right? And it's always great. You go through the interview, you're looking through, at all the work, getting to know the person. And at the end of the interview, I always say, do you have any questions for us? Right. And, sometimes it's crickets, right? And other times, people have prepared questions. They really understand HOK. What are you guys doing? How does it work? If I come there, what am I going to be doing? Right. And that is really valuable, and understanding the firm that you're going after, and doing the research is so important, and having questions, intelligent questions, once you do get the interview.
Yeah, David, I was thinking about the question as well. And I think if you are fortunate, you do get that interview, as David said, have the questions. Another thing is, I think it's great to be prepared and know what that firm represents. Like Francisco said, do your due diligence. But if you don't have maybe not the vocabulary, but if you're still questioning things, reach out to maybe someone in the AIA or something and be like, what do these different market sectors mean? Like, what is corporate? What is, you might know retail, but there are certain things in architecture where, I work at NBBJ, we have multiple industries, market sectors, and often a lot of interns, first years, they don't really understand it, and it is fine, but it's also worth you knowing what it is, because God forbid you don't like it, right? Like, you don't want to be sitting in something that, maybe you don't want to do arenas, right? You should know what, the sports sectors. So yeah, reach out to people, and yeah, best of luck. But yeah, Francisco, anything else? Any other items we want to address here?
I think, we covered a wide range of questions. Let's see. I think we have one last one here that it's somewhat pertinent. What do you guys feel about, I mean, at least what I've experienced talking to different individuals at different firms, even within our own board committees here at the AIA, is that a lot of the training, not the mentorship, a lot of the training should happen at the university level. I mean, that's a big loaded question. It's a question that's actually dictating the certain degrees that people are receiving now. I'm interested to hear from you, Michael, first. Do you agree with that? Should training happen at the university level, or is that up to the firm to develop emerging professionals?
So I'm going to have a slightly controversial take here, simply because of my background. I know at UC Berkeley, I'm a Cal grad, go Bears, that they don't train anybody. They just expect the students to know Rhino, to know AutoCAD, to know Revit. So they would assign the task, and there might be some workshops here or there that some graduate students would provide, but that the school itself did not offer any training. And to me, being in the atmosphere, going into the professional setting, I've always thought to myself, well, how best am I marketable, right? You know, for me, there is, you know, when I go out to represent AC Martin, there's AC Martin, but there's also Michael Chang as a product. And I want to make sure that I'm marketable at the best of my ability, so that if I do need to change work, it's easier. And that's my personal philosophy in terms of training. Obviously, I'm an advocate for firms to have training programs and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, when you're working at like 5 or 6 p.m. trying to get something done, you know, it's kind of on you to kind of figure that out, because sometimes that resource isn't there, right? To ask that question. So I think it's kind of a mix there, that firms should offer the training, but I think it's also the person itself.
Awesome. Laurie, you want to add to that?
I was going to say, I saw David's hand pop up. So maybe David can go first, and I'll
go ahead, David.
Solidify my thoughts.
I think it's maybe a little off topic, but, you know, in terms of training in college, you know, some of the best architects that I've hired over my career are people who worked in architecture firms throughout their entire college career. So when they came out, they really understood what was going on in an office. They already had, you know, a couple of years of experience. And there are some programs out there where I think they're on trimesters, and you have to work a semester, and then you're in school for a semester. And some of those grads are really, they come out, they're prepared to work in an office, which is a little bit different. I think, you know, looking back on my college career, you know, what did I learn? I learned a lot about architectural history, how to convey ideas, but at the end of the day, I just learned how to think. And I really wasn't necessarily prepared to go in and start working in an office, but at least they taught me how to solve problems, which I think is really important. So, you know, I think I'm looking for people who can think and solve problems. You know, we can teach people Revit, we can teach people AutoCAD, you know, we can teach people this kind of stuff, right? But we really want problem solvers and people that can really take a thing and run it to the ground, I guess. So it's a little bit off topic, I think, but I think it's important.
So what I was thinking, I was a little bit conflicted, because I had my sort of the way I would approach it as an individual if I went to a university where there wasn't training provided, but there was. I mean, I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, but I think professionally, we at Montalba at least try to look at the potential of the individual, and so that's outside of whether they are trained in a particular program or not. And so I think the interview process kind of helps us, and their other experience in their, I guess at this point, university career. On the other hand, again, this is more like as an individual, if I went to a college or university where They weren't really providing a lot of training, but I learned to think, and I learned to sort of go after things. And I was going for a job, a position at a firm that couldn't manage the training. I would, as an individual, figure out what I needed to do, go outside of a firm or a university, find the training and like get the training, and then approach the firm again and work it out. But again, that's just, I think that's just the way my mind works. And I think, I don't know that the universities have to do the training, but I think it definitely affords individuals who choose that program a little bit of a leg up, because they're obviously more able to be invested and really get into the firm really quickly. So I don't know where that answer is. It's sort of yes and no.
Understood. And it sounds like it looks like we're running out of time. So let's end the roundtable discussion now. And I would like to once again thank you all for participating. Special thanks to the panel for their valuable insight. Our sponsors, AC Martin, Montalba Architects, IBI, and HOK for allowing us this great opportunity to host this event. And most importantly, thank all of you for attending. I hope one of three things happened during the panel discussion. One, you feel confident that your firm is doing the best to ensure that you have the support you need to advance in your career. Two, you learned something that can help your firm refresh existing programs. Or three, we've empowered you with information on what others are doing to help you make the changes needed in your firm. Ultimately, I think we all have to remember, at least most of us on this call are emerging professionals. We are the future, and now's the time to take control of that future. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you.